He thought it was just the flu. Then his heart stopped. I've never really told this story in detail before. Maybe because it still feels too real. It's not the kind of scary story with shadows in the hallway or whispers in the dark. This one is about something worse. Something that hides inside you, waiting to strike when you least expect it. It's about my father. And it's about how a simple case of the flu destroyed everything we thought we knew about safety, health, and life itself. In early 2007, my dad was in the best shape I'd seen him in years. He was 54, tall, a little broad in the shoulders, always laughing. The kind of guy who woke up before sunrise just to make fresh coffee and read the newspaper before work. He wasn't the gym type, but he walked everywhere. He'd finally gotten serious about his cholesterol, meeting with his primary care physician every month, getting his EKGs, blood work, stress tests. And the doctor said the same thing every time. "You're doing great, Mark. Keep this up and you'll live to 90. That's what made what happened so impossible to understand. My dad was a regional project manager for an international shipping company. In late February of 2007, his boss sent him on a business trip to Seoul, South Korea. It was only supposed to be 5 days. Quick meetings, a few factory tours, then home. When he called us from the hotel on the second night, he sounded fine. Maybe a little tired, but cheerful. By the fourth night, he mentioned feeling a little under the weather. He laughed it off. Probably just some jet lag or something I ate. When he got home, he looked pale. His voice was raspy, and he had this dry, hacking cough that shook his whole body. "Dad, you okay?" I asked. He waved me off. "Just a damn flu. I'll be fine in a couple of days." He wasn't fine. 2 weeks passed and he still hadn't shaken it off. His fever would come and go. He'd start sweating in his sleep, then wake up freezing cold. Sometimes he'd cough so hard it made him dizzy. Mom begged him to take time off work, but he refused. He said things like, "They need me there," and "If I take a sick day, the whole project will fall apart." I remember one night, it must have been around midnight, I went downstairs for water and saw the glow of his office light. He was at his desk, head in his hands, coughing into a tissue. "Dad, come on," I said. "You need to sleep." "I'm fine, buddy. Just finishing this report." His voice was weak, but his stubbornness was stronger. 3 mornings later, he didn't come down for breakfast. Mom thought maybe he was sleeping in, which was already unusual. Around 9 a.m., she called his office, but no one had seen him. Around 10, his coworker stopped by to check in. The man came back to our house white as a sheet. He'd found Dad slumped over his desk at work. Cold, motionless, gone. Massive heart attack. Everything after that felt like a blur. The ambulance, the police, the phone calls, the memorial. People hugged us, brought casseroles, said things like, "He worked too hard," and "At least he didn't suffer." But none of that made sense. He was healthy. He'd been so careful. Even his doctor came to the funeral, looking like he hadn't slept in days. He told Mom that he'd reviewed all of Dad's medical records again. There had been no signs, no blockages, no artery issues, nothing to suggest a heart attack was even a possibility. So how did it happen? The answer came a few weeks later, from the county coroner's office. When they performed the autopsy, they found massive damage to his heart tissue. Damage that, according to the coroner, should have taken years to form. But it hadn't. It had happened fast, She said something I'll never forget. It's like his heart was under attack from the inside. At first, that made no sense. But the deeper the investigation went, the clearer and more horrifying it became. Dad's heart hadn't failed from stress, cholesterol, or even age. It had been destroyed by the flu virus itself. Apparently, the strain he'd caught in South Korea wasn't just any flu. It was an aggressive variant known for invading cardiac tissue. It didn't just attack the lungs and throat like a normal virus. It spread deeper, silently inflaming and damaging the muscles of the heart. When I read the report, my blood ran cold. It said his heart had been so inflamed that it could have stopped at any moment during the 2 weeks he was recovering. The fever, the dizziness, the night sweats. All of it had been his body trying to fight off something far deadlier than any of us understood. And every hour he kept working, every late night, every cup of coffee and missed hour of sleep. It all pushed him closer to the edge. Mom was shattered. She couldn't sleep for months. Every time she coughed or sneezed, she'd panic, thinking she might have that kind of flu. I started reading medical journals, trying to understand how something as ordinary as influenza could kill a man who'd been perfectly healthy weeks earlier. That's when I learned that it's not rare at all. Every year, tens of thousands die from flu-related heart complications. Myocarditis, pericarditis, arrhythmias. It's just that most people never hear about it. It's the kind of horror story that hides in plain sight. Years later, when COVID-19 hit, people around me said the same words over and over. It's just like the flu. Every time I heard that, something inside me snapped. I remembered seeing my dad's body in the hospital. The cold stillness. The way the doctors avoided looking us in the eye. The smell of antiseptic that lingered in my clothes for days. The flu kills. It's not just a cold. It's not just a fever and a few coughs. It's a monster that moves through your body quietly, taking its time, pretending to be harmless. Until suddenly, it isn't. That's the part that still keeps me up some nights. Because what scares me the most isn't that my dad died from it. It's that so many people still don't believe it can happen. I think back sometimes to that night, the last time I saw him alive, coughing in the dim light of his office. If I had been more forceful, if I had turned off his computer or dragged him to the hospital, would he still be here? Maybe. But I also know how he was. Stubborn, proud, always putting others first. Maybe that's what killed him as much as the virus did. When the coroner's report finally came in, there was a line near the end that hit me harder than anything else. Viral myocarditis caused by influenza infection. Contributing factor? Exhaustion. Exhaustion. That word feels so small for something that took so much. Now, every year when flu season starts, I tell everyone I know, friends, co-workers, strangers online, to take it seriously. Get vaccinated. Rest when you're sick. Don't go to work. Don't push yourself. Because once you've seen someone you love die with their eyes open behind a desk, you stop thinking of the flu as a joke. You start to understand that sometimes the scariest killers don't come with knives or dark hallways. Sometimes they just start with a cough. A few years ago, I went through my dad's old office boxes. Papers, receipts, photos. In one folder, I found a handwritten note taped to the inside cover of a planner. It said, "Remember, you can't help others if you don't take care of yourself first." I don't think he ever followed that advice, but I do now. And that's the only reason I'm still here to tell this story. The Cigarette Man in the Woods. When I was a kid, There was someone in our neighborhood who made everyone lock their doors at night. We called him the Cigarette Man. His real name was Ralph, a thin, tired-looking man in his late 50s who lived 2 streets over in a sagging old house with yellow curtains. He always smelled like smoke, always wore the same flannel jacket, and always seemed to be watching something. But we all knew what he did. He was a peeping Tom. It started one summer when a neighbor, Mr. Lewis, caught someone on his roof one night. The man had been peering through their skylight while Mrs. Lewis was changing for bed. When Mr. Lewis stormed outside with a baseball bat, the guy slipped down the ladder and vanished into the trees behind the house. They found the ladder leaned against the siding, cigarette butts in the grass, and footprints in the mud. Narrow, long ones. When the police arrived, the ashes from the cigarettes were still warm. A few hours later, they brought Ralph in for questioning. He admitted to being there, said he was just checking on something. No charges stuck. He went home the next day, and from that point on, he became our local ghost. You'd catch glimpses of him sometimes, the orange cherry of a cigarette glowing faintly in the trees at night. You'd smell smoke drifting through your open window when you were trying to sleep. Sometimes you'd find footprints beneath your window the next morning, pressed into the damp earth. We all knew. Everyone did. But Ralph was untouchable. People said he had a disabled wife, a frail woman who never left the house. He was her only caretaker. That apparently was why the police took it easy on him. They'd pick him up now and then, talk to him, and let him go. Every dad on the block swore that if they ever caught him near their property again, they'd handle it themselves. Teenagers tried chasing him more than once, but Ralph moved through those woods like something born there, silent, quick, untouchable. He never got caught again. He just faded into rumor. Years passed. Kids grew up. People stopped talking about Ralph so much. He became one of those remember when stories adults told over beers. The creepy guy from the old neighborhood who used to peek through windows. But he never really went away. I'd still see the faint glow of a cigarette in the woods when I visited my parents, sometimes right after midnight. Just hovering, watching. Then, years later, maybe 15 years after those first incidents, a new wave of trouble started. Homes began getting broken into, windows smashed, doors jimmied open, small items missing, electronics, jewelry, wallets, sometimes nothing but a few drawers rifled through. At first, people joked that maybe Ralph had upgraded, but even those jokes had an edge. Everyone said the same thing. If Ralph wanted to break in, he wouldn't need to force anything. He probably already had everyone's spare keys. And they were right. When one family moved out and cleaned under their porch, they found a small metal box buried in the dirt. Inside, cigarette butts, old keys, and small folded scraps of paper with people's names written on them. One said Harper Kid's window. Another said Lewis bathroom. Ralph had been keeping track, but by then he was older, in his 70s, and rarely seen. His wife had died years before. People assumed he wasn't a threat anymore. Until that night. It was late autumn. One of the neighbors, the same Mr. Lewis from the very beginning, heard a noise outside his house. Something like a scuffle, followed by a dull thud. He grabbed his flashlight and went outside. In his driveway, under the yellow glow of the porch light, lay a man, beaten nearly unconscious, face swollen, nose broken. Mr. Lewis called 911. When police arrived, they identified the man as a known burglar with multiple B&E charges. In his truck parked down the street, they found stolen items from the recent neighborhood break-ins. When he woke up in the hospital, The police asked who attacked him. He said he didn't know. The guy came out of nowhere, hit him from behind, and left him bleeding. But he remembered one thing clearly. He stunk of cigarettes. The cops canvassed the neighborhood. No one had seen anything. No cars, no sounds, no movement in the woods. When they checked Ralph's old house, it was dark and empty. The windows were dusty. The inside smelled faintly of tobacco and mold. A neighbor said Ralph had died a few weeks earlier. That's what made it worse. If Ralph was dead, then who had been in those woods? The rumor spread fast. Some said it was his ghost, protecting the only neighborhood he'd ever known. Others said it was a coincidence. Maybe the burglar made up the cigarette smell. But people started seeing the glow again. Just that faint red ember in the tree line, right around midnight. It would hang there for a few seconds, then vanish when you looked too long. And always after that, the faintest whiff of smoke drifting through the air. Even now, decades later, when I visit my parents, I swear I can smell it. That stale, burned smell of tobacco carried on the wind. Once, last year, I woke up in the guest room around 2 a.m. I didn't know why, but the room was cold, and when I turned toward the window, I saw it. That tiny, glowing cherry hovering in the trees, pulsing like a heartbeat. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then it went out. The next morning, I found footprints beneath the window, narrow, long ones. And in the dirt, a single cigarette butt, still fresh, still warm. The brand? Ralph's brand. The same kind he'd smoked when I was a kid. The Window Whisperer. True 80s home invasion horror story. It was the summer of 1986. A calm, golden season when neighborhoods were small, houses were close, and everyone knew each other's names. Back then, my family had a close friend named Rachel. She was 26, bright, funny, and had just bought her very first home. It was a tiny single-story house with peeling white paint and a porch swing that creaked even when no one was sitting on it. Rachel was proud. She'd worked double shifts for almost 2 years to afford the down payment. When she finally moved in, everyone in the neighborhood came out to greet her. Old couples offering lemonade, kids on bikes shouting hello, and a few friendly men offering to help with furniture. It was one of those neighborhoods where nothing bad ever happened, or so everyone thought. The day she moved in was hot. No clouds, no wind, just that heavy kind of heat that makes you sweat just standing still. She didn't have air conditioning. Back then, most small homes didn't. So she kept every window open, hoping for the smallest hint of a breeze. The curtains lifted every now and then, slow and lazy. And Rachel told herself she'd sleep well that night, even if it was warm. By sunset, the U-Haul was empty, and Rachel was surrounded by half-open boxes and tired muscles. She had a sandwich, a cold soda, and sat on the living room floor watching the last streaks of daylight crawl across the carpet. The world outside was peaceful. Somewhere a dog barked, and in the distance you could hear a train horn. She thought, I'm home. When night fell, Rachel didn't bother turning off the front lights. The living room and kitchen glowed with that yellowish light bulbs give. Safe, warm, ordinary. Her bedroom, though, she left dark. She told herself she'd rest just for a few minutes before unpacking again. She lay down on the bed, no sheets yet, just the mattress, and closed her eyes. She didn't remember falling asleep. What woke her was the sound of something soft but sharp. A slow, rhythmic shh, shh, shh. For a few seconds, she didn't move. Her brain was foggy, trying to pull itself out of a dream. Then she realized what it was. Someone was cutting her window screen. The sound was careful, precise, like someone who'd done it before. Rachel froze. Her heart started pounding so loud she was afraid whoever was outside could hear it. Her eyes darted toward the window. The room was dark, but she could see the faint glow of the streetlight outside, and a shadow moving across it. Someone was crouched right there, at her window. They thought she was in the living room. The lights out front were still on, and the TV was playing static from where she'd left it on Channel 3. Whoever was there must have assumed she was still awake, in the other part of the house. They didn't know she was lying just a few feet away. Her mind raced. No phone, no weapon, no neighbors close enough to hear her whisper, let alone scream. She could smell something faint, a mix of metal and sweat and maybe oil, like the person outside had been working with tools. Then came a whisper. Not a voice, not words, just the faint hiss of the blade moving faster now, trying to finish the cut. Rachel sat up suddenly. Her voice came out shaking, but loud. "I've got a gun!" A .44 Magnum. "If you don't get out of here right now, I'll blow your head off." The cutting stopped. Complete silence. Then a sound. Footsteps. Fast, heavy, running across the grass. And then, nothing. Rachel stayed frozen for almost 10 minutes, staring at the window. Finally, when she was sure it was safe, she got up, locked every door and window, and pushed a dresser against the back wall. She sat on the floor, shaking, until the sun came up. The next morning, she went outside to check the window. The screen was half cut. A razor blade was still stuck in the fabric, as if the person had dropped it when they ran. And in the dirt below, a single boot print. Deep, big. She said she could still smell the oil from his hands. She called the police later that day from a payphone at a diner down the street. They came out, took pictures, but there wasn't much they could do. There were no cameras back then, no fingerprints, no witnesses. The officer just told her to keep the windows closed at night. A few days later, one of her new neighbors came by, an old woman named Mrs. Calloway who'd lived there for 30 years. When Rachel told her what happened, the woman just frowned. She said, "That's not the first time someone's tried something like that here. A girl down on Maple Street had someone looking through her windows last summer. Never caught him." That night, Rachel slept with the lights on. For weeks, she'd hear every creak, every gust of wind, every leaf brushing the siding. Sometimes she thought she saw someone at the edge of the yard, a shadow, a flicker. But when she looked again, nothing was there. After a month, she had bars put on her windows. After 3, she sold the house. Years later, she told me that was the only time she ever truly believed she was going to die. The thought that haunted her most wasn't who the man was or why he chose her house. It was how calm he'd been. The slow, careful sound of that blade, as if he had all the time in the world. She said, "I think he would have killed me. I think he was waiting for me to wake up."